Excuse me, I was looking for an exit. It's strange, actually, because I was thinking about this the other day, and then I started talking about it yesterday. Of course, yesterday was yesterday. It makes you very aware that it's just a room. I can remember, and I must have been 5, maybe 4 years old, but it was summer, so probably 5, sitting in the living room with the French windows open and all the curtains drawn, sitting on this fold-away camp bed my mum owns, watching the eclipse live in real time on the television. And I'm always very aware of the exits in any given scenario, but I remember thinking that it must be different on television because my dad had told me I wasn't allowed to look at the sun today. But there it was, in black and white, on the 4x3 TV my mum had put on the floor while she moved furniture around, because she always moved furniture around, she never stopped moving furniture. I was looking for an exit, and the window was open, but I couldn't look up at the sky, only the TV screen. And then, this is from a book. Well, it's not from a book, it is a book. I call this poem By Jingo because I read the introduction to a book thinking it would be interesting, and then it was very UKIP-y. So the poem goes, for an English oak, an English rose, and history by autobiography, something verdant with apologies to the essentially colonized birthplace, democracy, engine, revolution, the hub of the empire, and the last-ditch expansionist war, making of the world, truism to have been born and lived in, a freer, more stable, more plentiful, to have been the subject of the fire. So here's the thing, this is what it's about. Anything that cannot be TV news can be pornography, such that what is personal is unacceptably explicit, and I am bereft of life without the endless parade of bomb, soldier, politician, coffin. The divide of the screen is what keeps us from atrocity. The compassion fatigue permeating everything drives us to inaction, and we sit in front of the television unsure if we're watching action or headlines. Except that I don't even have a TV license. How do we define terms, an aphorism, an anachronism, the truths that do not need stating? Denoting delimitation, distinction and definition in our need for solidity and delineation, that a truth can be concise, that history can be understood, that the past is a line of soldiers trampling down cracked plastic boxes into the sunset, the endless growth and progress that can only be obtained by never looking back. Nobody is learning from history. History is poorly plotted and lacks narrative coherence or satisfying payoffs, so it's not worth our time investing in it. Can you turn off the television? History will slowly destroy us time and time again. Ghosts, spirits and spectres in oral and written narratives, from figments, messengers populating representational functions, as manifold as their shapes and non-shapes beyond rituals they populate. Neither present nor absent, neither dead nor alive, attending to the intrusion to address the text as haunted. Do you like pain? That all histories are incomplete can be no apology for the inability of this history to know how it can be a history at all, when there is so little we know to be untrue and so very much forgotten, and all that is remembered is not present here to be lived and remembered again. Memory in social dimensions is hardly new in the contemplation of commentators that began to wind down undiminished. Post-war modernist narratives of progressive improvement turning to the past, of utopian vision to collect inspiration for unfulfilled claims. When does memory become history? Such presumptions are arbitrary, with distinct imperfections. Unifying aspirations nursed a wound, and the memory of trauma and regret matched by the commodification of nostalgia, by neural decay and sensory overload, by dying generations and official denial, memoir, curatorial work and the like about the living death, frameworks for legacies, a memory industry as the boom goes bust. Are you easily misled by narrative disguised as information? In this interest in memory, any contemporary memory, however important, the concentration we emphasize, the transformations, tracing out alternative sources of interest, a misleading narrative can consolidate the future of this still developing inquiry. Memory has a history, unreported, pervasive background noise. Are you numb? Are you numb to the suicide bombers, drone bombs, reality TV, endless marching, inadequate protest, journalism and memoirs, infomercial transport systems, entertainment, genocide transmissions, the loss of fidelity over time, the instant gratification of 24-hour news cycles straight to your television set? Nobody watches TV news anymore. Hung parliaments, the invasion and weapons of mass destruction, the dissolution of countries, unreported month-long genocides, epidemic unrest, the failings of the government to react due to the source of the action, the hauntology of lost futures. But things can only get better. In our unstoppable march of progress, conspicuous consumption, constructive consumption, free love, free money, free. It's a quote from Joni Mitchell. Preview television, analog switch off. That's not a quote from Joni Mitchell. Understanding the world only through the information I consume, and there is too much for free. Under late capitalism, I am the soylent green product being sold back to my own consumption of the endless miles of VHS tape and the mountains of plastic cases which are no longer objects but exist instead intangible in the air, in our pockets, on our desks, eternally with the conveyance of information. An unfinished maximalism where nothing is allowed to be concrete. An unfinished brutalism where the violence of history is repackaged into 5-minute segments and structured for the most palatable consumption of information. This is not a narrative, just something on TV. Stories grow in roots like phallic mushrooms. Reality becomes a rhetorical device, branching off ceaselessly in search of answers given already and understood as certainties, and this is the ultimate goal of culture. To sanitize memory until there is no resistance of history built up to protect us. It is not my place to say in each instance of action there is the possibility of finality. I sit at my desk and our bureaucrats keep things running. Our jobs pay a living wage. That could never happen here, now, here, now, here, now, here, now. Take another drink and bathe in the banality. Perhaps what it all means, all of this, all I've ever tried to mean, is that there is only incoherence. And what humanity is, ultimately, is the misbegotten belief in integrity. In this undeath, there are multitudes of equally medicated deaths taken for granted as a research sacrifice, forgotten into responsibility. This staircase is equivalent to a 15-story building, always, no matter the steps or where the shaft goes into the earth. So does that make me an optimist? Really, none of this was ever about me. Personal anecdote. Pop culture reference, foot and mouth disease on television as a childhood memory, terrible dreams where I claw at the oozing black sores on my gums, a late life appreciation of Francis Bacon, coherence in hindsight. The Wi-Fi lost contact when the train went into the tunnel, but you continue to refresh your newsfeed over and over and over again, until the information returned to you like the webbed subsystems below the earth that sustains the life of the fungus. And a fungus is a hauntology, because it is a life form that is death. I was told he was the type of person who called movies films, but the distinction was lost on me in my understanding of everything as a synonym bound only by the individual context of knowledge as repetition of connotation. So maybe I don't go to the cinema enough, but I lost interest when they fired all the projectionists and stopped showing newsreels and cartoons before the feature presentations, because they always suck. History and memory have no routine, and I impose that uncomfortable absence upon them. That certain things are knowledge and certain things are fiction, but the two of them are not incompatible. Writing has not yet helped me see what any of that means, any more than reading Didion means that I understand living in the 70s when everything was a drought. You could fuck whoever you wanted without a condom and not worry about getting AIDS. The only joyful worry being who would beat the shit out of you in the street for fucking sounds straight out of the policeman's throat, making sounds you've heard before from investment bankers and Tory fundraisers. I autopsy myself, vivisected, but all the strangeness is invisible in the brain. Sometimes this goes dark and sinks down the bitter well of a heart, but pornography and bathhouses and trying to understand the way we did things in the past will not help you see what it all means. We connected the cameras on our phones to a Polaroid printer and then threw the photos into a landfill. So this is an introduction and a poem and a film and a memory and a history and an action. On each level there is an emptiness as everything that could possibly be meant results in the understanding that what is meant and what is understood cannot be linked in any meaningful way. I sometimes wonder what my personality would have been like if I didn't grow up in a haunted house. So maybe what I've been trying to say is this. When I asked you all on Instagram, I agreed that 9/11 was probably the most important event in my lifetime. And I'm not a confessional poet, but I think when I say that, part of me means it in terms of geopolitics and stuff, but part of me means 9/11 is the reason I grew up using pop culture references to fill the hole in my life where there should have been a strong male role model. Maybe it's that my doctor first referred to me to be assessed for autism when I told him I spent 4 months researching the last Eurovision Song Contest held in Yugoslavia before it dissolved itself into a decade-long civil war. Or possibly it's that I only wrote a poem about that a year later, so 16 months. Or perhaps it's that this is a different poem entirely. This isn't that poem and it's been a year since that poem. Or perhaps I'm just being dramatic because I'm on TV. Excuse me, I was looking for an exit.